You are listening to the Therefore a Geek podcast, episode 75. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Therefore a Geek. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Tracy.
And today we are talking The Killing Joke. So Tracy and I will be discussing Killing Joke, the comic, and Dude, in a little private session of his own, will be discussing Killing Joke, the animated film.
Which is terrifying.
Dude on his own or Killing Joke, the animated film?
Dude on his own, although the other thing is terrifying all by itself.
Yeah, no, I think you're right to be more afraid of Dude and solo time.
He has no censor.
A little bit of me time for Dude.
Oh Lord. That's not a road we want to go down at all. So yeah, Alan Moore.
Yeah, so we're talking about The Killing Joke, which is Alan Moore and Brian Boland. And it was originally published in 1988. It's been reprinted several times. Tracy and I both read the deluxe edition, which came out several years ago. So, The Killing Joke, rough synopsis here from the back cover. This is one bad day. According to the grinning engine of madness and mayhem known as the Joker, that's all that separates the sane from the psychotic. Freed once again from the confines of Arkham Asylum, he's out to prove his deranged point. And he's going to use Gotham City's top cop, Commissioner Jim Gordon, and his brilliant and beautiful daughter, Barbara, to do it. Now, Batman must race to stop his arch-nemesis before his reign of terror claims two of the Dark Knight's closest friends. Can he finally put an end to the cycle of bloodlust and lunacy that links these two iconic foes before it leads to its fatal conclusion? And as the horrifying origin of the Clown Prince of Crime is finally revealed, will the thin line that separates Batman's nobility and the Joker's insanity snap once and for all? And yeah, I mean, that's a pretty apt description of the book. So it is originally intended as an out-of-continuity single Batman story. It's only 47 pages long. There's not a whole lot to it, really.
I was actually surprised at how quickly it flew by.
Oh, no, it reads very lightly. It's quite nice, I think.
This is a very infamous book, and so going into it and knowing Alan Moore's reputation as a writer, I kind of expected something that was even at first glimpse very heavy, and it really isn't. The wordplay is smooth, the writing, of course, is brilliant, and there are moments that can kind of flash by you a little too quickly. And it's not until you're finished and you wrap it up and you kind of think back a little bit before you realize the impact this should have had.
Well, for 47 pages, the book has a fairly considerable amount of depth. And it's interesting, for the deluxe edition, the foreword is written by Tim Sale, who himself has written several very well-known Batman stories. Long Halloween, Dark Victory, a couple of those. So Tim kind of points out, this is, especially in the 80s, this is one of the books that really changed the face of comics. It was Killing Joke. There was Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's Batman Year One, and then Alan Moore's Watchmen. Not oddly enough, that's what it is. So, you've got Alan Moore, and really the mix of Alan Moore and Frank Miller kind of changing the face of comic. And this is one of those books that's it's stuck around.
Yeah. And it's often referenced in other books as well. It's a cornerstone of DC lore and canon. Now, even though it wasn't intended to be canon at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. Probably the biggest thing that comes out of this, obviously, is the crippling of Barbara Gordon, which even, knowing that it's happening, knowing it's coming, it's still a pretty horrific read.
Absolutely.
It's an entire page that has absolutely no words on it. And just the facial expressions on Barbara are just, I don't mean to make a pun on this one, but gut-wrenching.
Well, and sort of caught me off guard. Even again, like you said, although I have not read this before, I knew what the story was. I mean, you can't really know anything about comics for very long without getting around to finding out what the plot is. And so as soon as I was reading the bits about the doorbell ringing, and it was sort of, the panels were leading up to her walking towards the door and saying she expected her friend there, even like just the moment that she opens it, the shock on her face sort of resonated with me as well. I could feel that moment when I don't even think that so Commissioner knew that Joker had gotten out at this point,
Yeah.
but neither of them ever expected him to show up at their door.
No, not at all. Well, it's one of the just having read the recent issue of Batgirl. It may have been the Rebirth issue.
Mm-hmm.
This specific page comes up where she talks about what she remembers most from this incident. It's not the gun, it's not the Joker, it's that stupid Hawaiian shirt. But it's the idea, kind of the those people who have been through very severe traumas, the things that stick out to them, the things that trigger the post-traumatic stress are not the obvious things.
Yeah, it's often the details.
Yeah, and sometimes the most bizarre details. There was an episode of West Wing that dealt with that, where one of the characters who had been shot kept having basically these flashbacks to it, because working in the White House, they were having different musicians playing throughout Christmas, and all the different horns and whatnot kept reminding him of the sirens, and that kept triggering. But it's that kind of idea, and really it's that kind of attention to detail and depth that lends such strength to the book and to Alan Moore's writing in general.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's one of those. This is not Watchmen, like in terms of this is not the magnum opus that is Watchmen. Watchmen. It's 12. Really, Watchmen's only 12 issues of comics. But more than that, Watchmen is a very, I don't want to say long form tale, but I mean, you don't really piece it together until the end.
Yes, exactly. And this
again, and you've got to go through 12 issues to get to the end. I mean, it's 47 pages, so it's basically a very large issue. It's a double-sized issue, basically.
Yeah.
And that's it. It is a single story. It is start and done.
Beautifully bookended. I love the quality of the writing in this. I mean, everything, it's yin and yang. Everything sort of flows in and flows out. Again, different events sort of bookend the beginning and the end of it. It's just absolutely beautiful piece. But as you said, it just flows so quickly, and then it's just done.
Well, as you are talking about the flow and the bookending. Yeah, I have to say a lot of that goes to Brian Boland's art. There's a couple of panels, especially. So, in this, we get the origin of the Joker, or a possible origin of the Joker, and we'll discuss that in a minute. And we get periodic flashbacks to that,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a couple of things with the flashbacks that kind of stuck out to me. One is the color, that the entire thing is very muted.
Yes.
And I should point out that we are, in fact, reading the deluxe edition, which has been recolored from the original. And the coloring is more of what Brian Boland wanted in the coloring. He and the colorist originally didn't agree. And I think someone was coloring his work kind of after the fact, so he was not happy with the final product in terms of the colors. But the colors for the flashback scenes are very muted and really kind of to gray tones, with individual items done in color. We've all kind of seen that look in Photoshop,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's done with to very good effect in this, especially. You have it goes in shades of red. If you look, as the background story progresses, it progresses into darker and darker and darker reds.
I did not notice that, but I'll have to go back and look. That's very interesting.
Yeah, the tentacles in the pot are kind of a pinkish hue, and then the crawfish they're eating at the restaurant
Mm-hmm.
are kind of a light red. Obviously, the Red Hood is very much a just kind of a standard red. And then during the heist itself, there's the hood, but then there's also the blood when the various other gangsters get killed, and that's obviously a very dark red.
Yeah.
There's that. There's also in several of those, the scene just preceding or the panel just preceding it mirrors the first panel of the flashback. There's a
Yes.
great one that I loved, which was the Joker it's raining. The Joker's standing there. He's looking down into a puddle. First off, the art and for the reflection is just fantastic. And then the next panel, and it's a page flip, which makes it even better. That kind of reveal is just good comic art.
Yes.
The structuring of the page and the panel right there. But you get the page turn, and then it's basically a similar mirrored image from the night of the heist, the bad night for the Joker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hell of a bad night.
It really is.
You know, he basically gets laughed off stage. So the night before, he gets laughed off stage as a comedian. Basically, admits to his wife that he's a failure. They've got a kid on the way.
Jeannie is her name.
Yeah, Jeannie, and he doesn't know what to do. So he decides basically to join up with these kind of low life criminals who
They basically need a fall guy.
yeah,
Is what they're looking
yeah.
for. And that's pretty clear. I mean, I don't think that anyone, well, I mean, obviously he's young and he's, just desperate, but at the same time, it's pretty clear
he's
they're
also
setting
somewhat
him up.
naive.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Yeah.
never done anything like this before. So he joins in, and as at the kind of conclusion of their conversation, a couple of cops find him to tell him that while he's been out, his wife has died in an accident. Basically, she was testing out the electric bottle heater for their baby, and she gets electrocuted basically. So she dies. He tries to back out of the crime, and basically the guys threaten him into still going through with it. The crime goes south, and they try and blame him. They try and pin it all on him because he's wearing the red hood. So they're trying to pin it like he's the leader.
Mm-hmm.
The other two criminals get shot, and in order for him to escape, he jumps into the river, which happens to be full of chemicals.
Dumping ground.
Yeah, which turn him into the Joker. And it's actually the reveal of him as the Joker for the first time is a very famous image. We'll definitely have to put in the show notes. And it's just it's
Eerie.
yeah, I was gonna say haunting. That's not quite where I'm quite the feeling though. But yeah, I think eerie's a good one, where you know everything that comes next.
Yes, exactly. The other bookending thing that I really appreciated, going back a little more to the writing, was that Batman starts the issue by going in to talk to the Joker about how he understands that the Joker thinks that their whole dance, their tango, if you will, is going to end with one of them killing the other or both of them killing each other. And he wants to find some common ground, not necessarily forgive the Joker for what he's done, not necessarily, free him or anything like that, but find common ground in which they both have sort of a mutual humanity. And it turns out, of course, that the Joker has escaped and there's someone else in his place in the cell. But this is clearly something that is bothering Batman, because at the end of the issue, when he bumps into the real Joker, even given everything that has happened with Barbara and Commissioner Gordon, Batman still wants to find this commonality between the two.
Well, so let's be honest though. There is a commonality, and the commonality is the one bad day, right? Joker's had his bad day. So did Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Batman, and the Joker even supposes he supposes that that something happened, I
Right.
don't think he doesn't fully understand what happened. I tend to subscribe to the idea that the Joker actually knows who Batman is, and he doesn't care. And I can kind of see evidence in this book both ways. And I don't think Alan Moore had one stance or another. At least it didn't intend for one stance or another. But I think the Joker knowing who Batman is almost works better to this.
Yeah.
Where he's had the bad day. The Joker thinks that, Batman.
The Joker just wants Batman to admit that he himself is also insane.
Right.
He's like, you had a bad day. I had a bad day. It made me insane. I need you to admit to the fact that you are also insane, even though you're pretending sanity.
Well, and he's kind of, in a way, he's kind of forcing another bad day onto Batman.
Absolutely.
Right. So he's trying to prove a point, and he's trying to use Gordon to do it. And basically, the idea is he's trying to break Gordon. So he's trying to put Gordon into that bad day. So he shoots Barbara in front of Gordon. He then, kidnaps him, shows him pictures of Barbara, injured and stripped naked. He's, stripped naked and humiliated. Joker does everything he can think of and everything in his power to just destroy Gordon's spirit. And although Gordon is obviously at times catatonic and with distraught in this, with despair, he doesn't break. And in fact, Batman comes much closer to breaking than Gordon does.
Yep, I would agree.
And Gordon is the one who tells him, no, we have to do this by the book. Bring him in. We have
prove to him that this way works.
Right. And basically prove to him he's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of the big takeaway I get from that is that, Gordon essentially proves to the Joker that he's not right. Also, to an extent, to Batman.
Which is vital. I mean, it's very important to Batman's continued presence in Gotham.
Well, aside from that, I think if Gordon had collapsed, if Gordon had given in to the bad day, I think it would have made Batman question himself. If Gordon, who is invariably one of the rocks of Batman's universe, one of the pillars that really holds Batman together, if Gordon falls, then obviously Batman feels that he's I think Batman feels he's going to fall as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those, Batman knows he's the fastest, he's one of the smartest, all of these great things. At the same time, there is a certain level of self-doubt built into Batman. He has to be better. He has to be stronger, faster. He can't let this happen again. That kind of thing. He's driven by that feeling of being powerless as a kid. I couldn't help them. I need to help people now. I have to be better. I have to be stronger, faster, smarter, everything like that. So just because Batman is all those things doesn't mean he's not constantly questioning who he is and where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so coming back to what we talked about a minute ago is the origin of the Joker.
So I'm not a huge DC fan. Is this the first time that anyone has actually written an actual origin story for the Joker? Not one that was sort of theorized or made up by another character, but where we actually see it as a potentially real story.
I don't know, honestly. I do read some Batman, and obviously, or some DC, and Batman is among the most that I read. Batman and Green Lantern are the two titles I read the most.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not certain. And to be honest, I have a little bit of an issue with the idea of an origin story for Joker. In that, I just don't think. I think Joker works better without one, or without a clear origin.
Yeah.
And I think Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, does that perfectly. Every
Brilliant,
time the Joker
yes.
introduces himself, he asks, "You want to know how I got these scars?" And it's always a different story. And there's actually a line in here. I'll go ahead and read it as soon as I find it. That Joker is talking about what happened, what happened to him.
When he's explaining the story we've already been seeing throughout the previous part of the issue.
Yeah. I'm trying to find, because it's a really good line. Oh, here it is. Like, something like that happened to me. I'm not exactly sure what it was. Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm gonna have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So even
I saw that
in
too.
giving a clear and concise story, backstory for the Joker himself says, "Well, I don't really remember it. I'll tell it one way, I'll tell it another."
And to him, it's all equally true.
Right. And it also, I think it goes to show how deeply shattered his mind is.
Yes.
Which, again, contrasts Batman, who is perfectly structured.
In a way, has to be.
This is one of those stories I think makes... that demonstrates how well the Joker and Batman play off one another. Again, I also think Nolan's Dark Knight does the same thing. It accomplishes a very similar goal. Dude's not a huge fan of the Joker as the villain. He's much bigger fan of the Riddler, who I think is very good. But in terms of just kind of the yin and yang, the definition of a dramatic foil, I think you got to look very long and hard to find ones that fit as well as Joker and Batman.
Yeah, I would agree.
As unfortunately with most things lately, this book is not without its share of controversy. There's kind of two that come to mind, kind of related. One, we'll touch on the second one just briefly, because we've talked about it at length in several podcasts. But the first one is what is referred to as women in refrigerators.
Yes.
That is a term coined by Gail Simone, and it had to do with basically came back from the late 90s, 1999 actually. And it was from an internet discussion forum, and I actually believe it became its own website. And the idea is that, and this has happened, I have to say, there is some, I would say, significant credence to this complaint. And that there are a lot of female characters who either are rather horribly maimed or brutalized, straight up murdered, depowered, or in some way made insignificant in order to be the motivating factor for a male hero, the story for a male hero. And the term women in refrigerators itself comes from an issue of Green Lantern where Kyle Rayner's girlfriend is murdered and stuffed into a refrigerator as basically a tragic motivation for Green Lantern. This is one of the books that is most commonly pointed to for the women in refrigerators argument. And to an extent, I will concede that there is a significant element of that. My issue with that is I think that is putting a very narrow set of blinders on and not taking the work as a whole. I think
Can you flesh that out a little?
So I think there's a lot more to this work than just that. Yes, it is a motivation for Batman, for Jim Gordon. For one, again, Alan Moore had no intention for this to be continuity.
Yes, that's a huge caveat to this discussion.
Well, it's a caveat, and again, I'll admit that doesn't make it better, right? Just because it's not canon doesn't mean that, hey, Alan Moore wasn't using Barbara Gordon as a motivation for Batman.
Yeah.
But I think, in general, I think that this is one of those cases you have to go to extremes for one to find to be able to use this story, right? It can't just be I had a bad day at work. Right? This has to be as tragic as they can make it.
Yeah. For the story to do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
And at the time, there are few people who are closer than Barbara Gordon, who is Batgirl, and Jim Gordon. So I think that's part of it. The other part is she's not the only person who is treated
brutalized
in that fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Jim Gordon, although not physically maimed, is treated in a similar fashion.
He's stripped completely naked. They goad him with cattle prods to get onto this ride to see his daughter compromised, humiliated, damaged, almost, as far as he's concerned, irreparably. I also have to point out that the women in refrigerators argument usually applies to a romantic interest, and Barbara isn't. Well, see, this is a hard one to say, but for the most part.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily agree with the fact that it's always romantic interest. I think Aunt May is an example.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Aunt May is constantly in fucking peril.
That's true.
As a motivation for Spider-Man, which drives me nuts because
I would say that Barbara wouldn't be. Well, I guess she's, because of her relationship with Batman, I guess she is a little bit of a motivator for him. But reading the story at face value, it seems as though Barbara's paralysis and humiliation was the impetus to break Gordon, and the breaking of Gordon was the impetus for Batman to step in. I didn't feel as though Batman had seen the pictures of Barbara or really was impacted by what happened to her just yet. And I'm sure that was coming, but it would have fallen off the edge of the end of the story.
So I think you're forgetting the scene in the hospital where Batman goes to the hospital. Yep. So I don't think it's a romantic interest. I think it is, and this is one of those, it could be, couldn't be, in terms of Joker knowing who Batman is. Mm-hmm. Because either if he knows who Batman is, then he's struck at two people who are exceptionally close. Like,
yeah.
Not only is he going for Gordon, he's also going for someone that Batman has been training and has been mentoring.
Yeah.
So there's that, or he just it was a random happenstance for the Joker.
Happy little accident, as Bob Ross likes to say.
I'm not even sure Bob Ross could say that one with a straight face.
I went real dark.
It's a happy little. Oh, fuck me! Nope, I screwed. I screwed up. Fuck it. Yeah. So. Yeah. Again, I mean, there is certainly some credence to the argument. I just don't know that. I don't know that I would call it the poster child for women in refrigerators. The second controversy is one, like I said, we've talked about kind of at length, and that is the Batgirl cover that plays homage to the Killing Joke. Mm-hmm. And again, the censorship argument aside, I don't personally know that the cover was in as bad a taste as a lot of people think it was. There just aren't that there aren't that many stories that involve Batgirl and the Joker. So if you have a month that has Joker themed covers, regardless of the wisdom of that decision, I don't work at DC editorial. I don't know what why they choose to or choose not to do that, but whatever. But if they're going to do that, that is the first thing that would pop into nearly any artist's head is Killing Joke, because that's the most visible connection between those two characters.
Yeah. And
to be honest, I kind of get off topic a little bit. This was not at all intended to be a canon piece. It obviously was taken as canon and very much changed Barbara Gordon. I think to a large extent changed Barbara Gordon, not for the better, but
For the more interesting.
artists and writers were able to take her and do really cool things with her.
Yep.
It's one of those ends can't justify the means kind of arguments, and I don't think I would never argue that it does. But I think the end result turned out much better than it could have. Right? This could have been a character that was just relegated to nothingness afterwards. You may see in the background of a panel, or Jim Gordon may talk about his daughter, at some point. But because this was a character that fans and writers and artists loved, they said, kind of, fuck you, Alan Moore. We're going to do something really cool with her. And I also kind of like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, if you don't see the stories you want being written, write them.
Yes.
So if people didn't like what was happening with Barbara, if you want really cool Barbara Gordon stories, write really cool Barbara Gordon stories.
Yeah. And that's definitely happened.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look back. Like I said, Gail Simone is one of the person who coined the phrase "women in refrigerators," and she had a very strong run on Batgirl just recently. Well,
yes.
A couple of years ago now at this point, but so it is certainly possible to redeem a character who has been in the midst of something like this.
Been put in a fridge.
Yeah, it's funny. There's actually an interesting, not to go into it at this point, but there's kind of an interesting, we'll call it caveat to the women in refrigerators, and that is called men defrosting. Well, so, and again, it's similar to the argument, and they're not necessarily wrong, in that very often men who are put in the same situations regain their powers or are miraculously healed or something. So,
Yeah. No, I see that one too. That's funny. We'd have to do perhaps another conversation that gets into the depth of that one, but yeah, I like what has happened to Barbara since, and even now, even her current run is really cute and sweet, and it's aimed a little bit more at girls as opposed to adults, but I absolutely agree with you in that she's been taken in so many cool directions now that probably were not possible prior to this.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. I really liked Gail Simone's portion of the run on Batgirl in the New 52.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't start out liking the Batgirl of Burnside. And the character and the writing has actually quite grown on me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's a really nice... I'm glad I stuck with it, because I was kind of thinking about dropping it when I was like, oh, the book's okay, but it's not really for me. And then I really came to enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like it when I'm surprised like that. That's always really kind of a treat.
Yes.
All right, so folks, that wraps it up for our portion. But, don't tune out just yet, because dude, like I mentioned before, is having a little solo time, and he's going to be discussing The Killing Joke, the animated film that was released just last week.
2016's Batman: The Killing Joke is DC Animation's adaptation of the 1988 graphic novel of the same name, written famously by Alan Moore, who is well known for works such as The Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and From Hell, with art by Brian Brillard and John Higgins. It premiered this July at San Diego Comic-Con with mixed reviews and a little bit of controversy. The film is written by Brian Azzarello, who you may know from series such as The 100 Bullets, and is directed by Sam Liu, who's directed other DC animation films such as Batman Year One. Most importantly, the movie is produced by Bruce Timm, the same guy who gave us Batman the Animated Series. I think it's fair to say that this is a series that has defined Batman for nearly an entire generation. An important aspect to that is the voice actor Kevin Conroy, who has played Batman for nearly 25 years, and his opposite, Mark Hamill, who's played Joker exactly as long. Rounding out the cast is Tara Strong as Batgirl, aka Barbara Gordon, and Ray Wise as Commissioner Gordon. The story centers around Joker, who has just escaped from Arkham Asylum. His plan is to kidnap Commissioner Gordon and drive him entirely insane. Joker's working from the premise that anyone, no matter who it is, even the vaunted and valiant Commissioner Gordon, can go utterly insane after one really bad day. So Joker devises about the worst day you could possibly have for someone's life. He shoots Commissioner Gordon's daughter, Barbara Gordon, directly in the stomach, severing her spine and crippling her, then strips her naked and takes photos of her. He abducts Commissioner Gordon, takes him to some kind of abandoned funhouse carnival, and shows Gordon, who has been beaten and stripped naked himself, all the photos. And of course, it's up to Batman to save the day. As Bruce Timm noted in interviews, if he just did a direct adaptation of the 1988 graphic novel, he'd end up with a feature-length film that only clocks in at about 42 minutes. So, Timm and Azzarello added what's been called a 30-minute prologue to the film, expanding the character of Batgirl, basically because Barbara Gordon only gets shot in the original graphic novel. This has been leading to some of the controversy. In fact, that's pretty much all the controversy has been about. But before I get into that, let's talk about what works in the film before we talk about what doesn't and the controversy. Overall, I like the story of The Killing Joke, mainly for its portrayal of the Joker. I never liked it when the Joker tried to be this grandiose, almost megalomaniacal villain. It's much more scarier and much more interesting when he is smaller, more constrained, and focusing on things that are more realistic, like kidnapping someone, torturing them, and trying to drive them insane. To Timm and Azzarello's credit, they basically capture everything from Moore's original graphic novel. They've got it perfectly down. It's almost a shot-for-shot remake with a few added spots here and there. There are a lot of aspects of the original Killing Joke that I like a lot. I like the violence. I like the darkness. I like how far Moore pushed it. It makes it feel real. It's much more visceral, and it's a much more compelling read. And to their credit, Timm and Azzarello give us just that. What also made The Killing Joke unique, in addition to the violence and the grimness, was the backstory of the Joker, something that hadn't been tackled by writers before Moore. Here we see the man before the Joker, a failed stand-up comic living in poverty with a devoted and loving wife and expecting a child. So, to make ends meet, the guy decides to pull a heist with local criminals. In the process of planning, he learns that his wife has been killed in a freak electrical accident. The criminal thugs hold him to his promise to rob the company that he used to work for. Everything goes wrong when a security guard shows up, Batman shows up, and the guy falls into a vat of chemicals, coming out the other end, Shawshank Redemption style, laughing like a lunatic, thus giving us the Joker. All that stuff I really thought was great. In the screen adaptation, all that is portrayed exactly as seen in the graphic novel and works perfectly well. So what are some of the problems? For me, chief among them was the quality of animation. It had this strange liquid gel look to it that I just don't like. In fact, I haven't been impressed with American animation in the last 15 years. The characters are drawn very blocky, it's low on details, the backgrounds aren't dynamic, they're very static. Characters that are sitting at a bar or a table just kind of freeze in place, almost like a matte painting. It really doesn't work, and the animation was probably my biggest complaint. My other problem with the film was the prologue, but not for the reasons that you might think. I'm actually sympathetic to Timm and Azzarello's problem of trying to expand the story, give Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, a little more stuff to do. The problem was the execution. It just doesn't work. The prologue feels like it was slapped on to the beginning of The Killing Joke. Probably because it was slapped on to the beginning of The Killing Joke. The story of the prologue is utterly and totally original and independent of The Killing Joke. It revolves around Barbara Gordon and her tensions with Batman, as well as her attempt to bring down a local, uninteresting, uncolorful thug named Francesco. While not bad in and of itself, it has nothing to do with The Killing Joke. Why are we adding an extra villain here? It just felt like a really long episode of Batman the Animated Series that we didn't need. I would much rather have liked to see the Joker added to the prologue, maybe some dynamic between Batgirl, Batman, and the Joker, so that when we got into the meat of the original Killing Joke story, it made sense. Maybe even add a touch of irony. If they wanted to expand the Killing Joke, why did they just throw in a new villain and throw in Batgirl with this strange dynamic? This is not to say the entire prologue was bad. There were a couple aspects of it that I really did like. One of which is that the characters are not shown to be goody two-shows. There's some ambiguity to their goodness, for lack of a better term. One of which is the fact that Batgirl and Batman have sex on a roof. It's clearly an error in judgment for both of them, but it worked for me. I thought it was adult and I thought it made sense. On the other hand, some people had big problems with this. For me, I think this is a red herring. It's not a big problem. It worked. The other thing I liked about Barbara Gordon is, again, she's a little more dynamic. Again, she's fawning over her boss, something that's realistic and believable, and she seems to have an anger management problem in the prologue. At one point, when she sees a boyfriend-girlfriend couple have a fight, she puts the guy in an armbar and throws him over some bushes. I liked it. Again, the characters are flawed. They're not perfect. They're not goody two-shoes. That part I was okay with. I think that's where most of the controversy is coming from. I think it's not founded. I would have rather it had something to do with the original Killing Joke. Just slapping it on there and adding another villain doesn't work at all. Also, if Tim and Azzarello wanted to expand the Killing Joke a little more, they actually could do plenty with the Joker's backstory. Moore's graphic novel is fairly thin, as they've admitted, so adding more things to the Joker's backstory, letting us see more about him, giving him a worse day than he already had, could have done a lot more to enhance the viewing experience rather than the prologue. Now, as far as the voice acting is concerned, Mark Hamill is stellar. It really is his movie when you get into the Killing Joke narrative. He's absolutely fantastic. I can't say enough good things about him. Tara Strong and Ray Wise are absolutely serviceable and do a fantastic job. I was surprised at how much I did not enjoy Kevin Conroy in this. He almost sounded bored. In the prologue, he really wasn't given much to work with, and in The Killing Joke, Moore didn't write Batman particularly well, and Azzarello and Tim didn't expand upon it or try and edit it up a little bit. It didn't work until the very end when Batman and Joker have their big confrontation. So I have to say, overall, the voice acting was good. Conroy let me down a little. So overall, I enjoyed DC Animation's adaptation of The Killing Joke. It obviously, to me, wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. The controversy around the prologue, Batgirl having sex with Batman, I think is kind of nonsense. And the classical complaints about the violence and the horror of the story, I just don't take seriously, and I'm not going to waste my time dismantling them. It's a dark story with dark characters and have dark outcomes. If you don't like that, then The Killing Joke just isn't for you. Go read an Archie comic book or watch, Sunday morning cartoons. This is an adult animated film. It's rated R for a reason. It's actually kind of a soft R, but nevertheless, it's an adult story. So for all those reasons, I give the film about a C+. It's just okay. It had a strong source material that they were true to, but adding that prologue hurt it, and there were some missed opportunities that would allow them to expand on the original source material without violating the spirit of the story. So that being said, I give DC Animation's Batman The Killing Joke a solid C+, and I'd recommend it for any fan of the franchise.
Folks, if you like what we do, make sure you head on over to thereforeigeek.com. You can check out our blog posts and our podcasts. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And you can find this podcast and other podcasts like it on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So once again, folks, you have been listening to Therefore I Geek.